letting me do.
All right. All right. So first things first, uh, once you get in to Sam.gov, all of the data reports are in Sam.gov set up so um, you can run programs in the background that connect to this data. So if I run a ERP system that pulls, or if a government like opportunity website that pulls opportunities in, because all opportunities technically flow through here. This is called the government port of entry for all opportunities as well. So in theory, all opportunities except for those that go out through another means are going to go through here under opportunities. And a lot of sites will connect to sam.gov through an API, and they'll suck data in. It's set up to do that. So there's tons of data that you can pull out of sam.gov and do tons of things with. Data services does that, but data bank allows you to go in here and go under contract data, and you've got these reports that you can start running, and you can do lots and lots and lots of standard reports just in general, or you can go down to ad hoc, which is what I do, which allows you to run reports against any data field that is flows through a contract action report. So fpds.gov is the public facing side of all government contracting, aside from classified contracts. All agencies, all federal agencies are mandated by law to have their contract writing system either manually or automatically publish contract actions through this website. I'll show you. I don't even know. Let's see if that, oh, for the love of Pete. Well, we'll try this. You can search on lots of stuff in here. Of course, now it's not working. I couldn't tell you why. Let me try on mine to make sure it's not might be the SAM or FPDS is just not working right now. FPDS is just down, so that's fun. But if it was up, I would show you. It would have all of these data fields. There's hundreds. It's the last step whenever the contracting specialist or officer releases the contract, any version of the contract, the initial award or any subsequent modification. That's contract action. So an award's an action, a mod's an action, termination is an action. Any action gets published through this site. Most entities have a 24-hour turnaround. So when the contract action gets published, it'll be publicly available through here. Department of Defense gets a 90-day delay because it's Department of Defense and they don't want real-time contract data to be gathered and aggregated by enemies of the United States to gain information about where stuff is moving logistically or what new projects and programs are being funded and at what levels. So there's a 90-day delay. Still, it's really good. It's the best you're going to be able to get from information flowing on, in near real time on Department of Defense contracts. It's just, in your mind, it's 90 days old. But all of those contract action fields, everything from contract number, who the funding agency is, and there's a split. The funding agency is going to be different from the contracting agency. Contracting agency, and every time you hear agency, that's Army or Navy, Department of Defense, because Department of Defense can do its own stuff without pushing it down to a subordinate department or agency. When you talk about office, that's the base, that's the contracting office, that's the program office that's doing the actual funding. So it hierarchically you go Department of Defense, Department of Navy, Office of Naval Research, and that's probably as far as it's going to go because ONR has its own contracting office. But if they didn't, and if they outsourced their contract to another contracting office, then you'd have a contracting office as well. That would all be reportable through the site as far as the entities that are doing the action. As far as what's happening on the action, you'll get everything from the date, obviously, that the action was entered. You'll get the date of the contract in terms of when it was signed, when it started, a period of performance in terms of a start date and an ultimate estimated completion date. You'll get the total potential value. So if it's a contract that's going to have that has a ceiling value that's not fully funded, it'll show that. It'll show what funding has been obligated to date and what that particular action did, whether it was an obligation or a de-obligation. It'll show you the dollar value change that contract action happened. Then you'll get into, of course, you'll be able to get the contract number. You'll be able to get the indefinite delivery contract number if it's an IDIQ, an ordering agreement of some sort that then task and delivery orders are being cut off of. You'll get the IDIQ number. You'll get the actual task or delivery order number. You'll get the solicitation number, which is really key. So if you're doing market research and you want to know what solicitation resulted in the particular contract, you can find that solicitation. I'm almost guaranteed. And that solicitation, 9% of it turns into the contract. Government releases the RFP, everything but the last couple sections of that RFP become the contract. So the statement of work, you'll get the details, the locations, the places of performance, the specifications, all of that will be in the RFP. So if I know the funding, I know the value, and I know what drove that, then I can do some backwards math to figure out pricing. That's what I do. I do competitive price analysis to look into competition, but also to look at the propensity of a office to do particular types of work, how much they buy for certain things, or how much funding they get that they have on programs that they're pushing out. You can pull big line item budget numbers down, but it's not going to get granular. Like, programs of record will be in the defense budget. The F-35 program will be listed by name, and it'll have a chunk of money every year that comes appropriated towards that particular program. Major programs are going to be in the defense budget that gets approved by the president. But beside from that, there's just going to be big line item numbers by type or color of funding. So for O&M, 1-year funding, there'll be the huge chunk that Congress has approved for the Department of Defense. And then you can see that the Department of Defense allotted a large chunk of that down to the Department of Army, Department of Navy, Department of Air Force, right? But you don't know where that money is going necessarily beyond that. If you could really dig into it, you could probably get a little bit more granular and figure out, some of the makeups of those individual entity budgets. But the money that most people in the tech industry are interested is not 1-year money. It's not just like operations and maintenance money. It's money that's being used for research and development or procurement for large weapon systems, for integration of new technology, for actual research and development. And that stuff just gets loosely tied up into budget, flow up to the top, and come down to huge chunks or pots of money. So it's really hard to figure out what's going on. So using a tool like FPDS, and by the way, FPDS is just the repository for all the contract actions. All that information is aggregated in Sam.gov, and that's where you pull the report down to actually use that data in any actionable way. But that is, and that's what it was intended for. It was intended for a public-facing tool for really entities like Congress to be able to run and see how the Department of Defense, how any federal agency is spending money. And gather data on that. So anything that is in Sam.gov in a contract data report is pulling from FPDS, and FPDS has tons and tons and tons of data fields, and they're all queryable. They're queryable in standalone. So if I just want to run a report that says, over a period of time, tell me all the contracts that came from this office, I could do that. Then you can get much more granular and start tying queries together. I want to know all period of time, all the contracts that came out of an office, that came out of an agency, that came out of an office in particular, that were greater than this value, but less than this value, that that's contained within their description of requirement, because that's a reportable field, a particular keyword. I can know that I can pull that data down. And then you can start figuring out companies are. If there's a company that in particular you're interested in partnering with or maybe competing against, that's where it becomes really useful. After you log into Sam.gov and go to data bank, ad hoc is where standard reports are just stuff that are built, high level stuff that you can just pull pre-built. Ad hoc is much more interesting. You get two options. You get award or IDV information. IDV stands for indefinite delivery vehicle. So single awards or information that pertains to an award off of an indefinite delivery vehicle. And a lot of these big contracts that the Department of Defense uses are indefinite delivery contracts that have task and delivery orders. So that's good to know. And then OTAs. Now, the thing about OTAs, other transaction information, is that most OTAs flow through consortiums, and they don't have an obligation to report. If the agency itself is doing the OTA, then they will report that information, but there's far less data in SAM.gov that would pertain to another transaction, a non-FAR-based contract. Everything else will be reportable. There'll just be a delay unless it's classified. And I had to figure that out because I was asked to pull information in OTAs, and there's nothing in here, right? I know there's the OTAs, but there's nothing in here. Why is that? And that's when I realized that consortiums don't report. So these are all reports that I've built. I've built many, many, many reports. Every report I built gets saved, so I just haven't cleaned this up. But if there was a report that I already wanted to use, a report that I know that fits a lot of the data set, I just want to use one query or one parameter in it, I'll just use one of those, or I'll just create a brand new one. Go to create, go to report build is what I do. And there are step-by-steps on how to kind of do this. They're not very good. There are just, and I can't find them all the time. You have to search through sam.gov. They're not great. But this is what the report builder looks like. It's pretty simple. It's broken down by some date ranges. This section right here, these would be your column headings for all different types of information that you want to be displayed in your report. And you can order it. You can, I'll do that in a second, make it higher. If I take it to the top, it'll be the first column that shows, just for data arrangement purposes. Down here is funding information. And then down here is my criteria, my attribute that I want the report specifically to be looking at. So what information I want to be showed according to what criteria. And it's all the same data fields up here as down there in the display information versus the criteria. So the first thing you need to do is set a date range. It depends on what you're doing. If you're looking for, I'll do this, for instance, if I'm looking at a company that we're in team with, and I want to know if they have experience, past performance that means anything. I won't be able to tell how well they performed on a contract, but I'll be able to tell if they've done work over a period of time that looks or feels like the work that we're asking them to do. And there's information like, for instance, the contract pricing type. Cost plus contracts are primarily the contracting method that the government will use for R&D type work, because it's concrete. The description of the requirements aren't concrete enough to make it a firm fixed price contract. So it's one thing if the company says, oh yeah, I've got all the experience in the world, but then I look at them and they do cost plus type contracts. I think, well, they don't actually have all the experience in the world. They think they do, but they really don't. It's a world of difference between firm fixed price contract and a cost plus fixed fee contract in terms of the accounting system and business maturity. But as far as past performance goes, relative or recent and recency is big in terms of past performance. The government typically go back more than 3 to 5 years in terms of recent, and then relevant is the other piece, right? But recent, you can pull a report here up to 14 years, but normally I'll go back about 5 years. So the easiest thing to do is select a date and then just back it up. So I'll just go back 4 years in this case. And yeah, I did do it to November 1st. Department of Defense, of course, will have a 90-day. So anything that if I pull a report that's 11/1, it's really only looking back through the end of August is what I'm going to be able to see, but that's fine. I don't care about this. If you wanted to drill down to a specific modification to that contract, you could drill into a modification date. I normally won't do that. As far as criteria, it just depends on our attributes that you want displayed. Again, think of that as columns of data. In a spreadsheet, it's whatever you think would be useful. Now, for me, I typically I want to know who the company is, and it's there's you'll notice when you start using this tool, by the way, that there are lots of data fields that look the same, and it's just trial and error to figure out which one gives you information that actually is going to have something there. And a lot of the times, why I had FPDS pulled up. See if it's up now. It might actually be up. It might have just been a temporary thing. But I'll have FPDS up because mouse over the data fields and it'll tell you the name of that data field. So if I see information displayed in there, but my report isn't giving me information, it's probably because I'm showing an attribute that is similar to what I want it to show. Intuitively, you'd think it would be the same thing, but in reality, it's a data field that doesn't get recorded, and it is slow today. So I'll mouse over the data field to get the name of that data field and pull it in because they are the same names, which is nice. But legal business name, I'll pull that in there. I'll normally do like a contract start date, so period of performance start. Trial and error again. Intuitively, you'd think stop date would be the nice way of saying it. No, you have to search for completion or ultimate completion is what it would be, what the data field would be called. Ultimate completion date, estimated ultimate completion date. Yep, there you go. So now I've got the company's name, I've got periods of performance. Let's pull in there the contract numbers. That's key. Contract numbers are not called contract numbers. They're called PIIs or procurement instrument identification. And you get a whole bunch of them down here. For whatever reason, these ones seem to be the ones that work for me. I'll get the PIID, and then I'll get the referenced IDV PIID. That's the indemnity contract, and that's the task order. And that just gives me the ability to say, if I don't pull that in, I'm just going to get what looks to be a contract number. And unless you contract numbers, you just think that that was the most important thing and not realize the fact that behind the scenes, there's an indefinite delivery contract that is really the ordering vehicle that I also want to know information on. And then I'll probably grab the description of requirement. There's lots of things that have description. There we go. Description of requirement. You can see how you order them there and how you want the information displayed. You can of course you can get like size status information, contracting officer determination for size status of small business or veteran-owned small business, whatever, if you're interested in that. Polling market research for what types of companies out in terms of socioeconomic status. Let's see if I can find cost of pricing data. Type of contract pricing description. This is one I always pull in because it'll tell me again if the contract was firm fixed price or cost plus fixed fee or time and or whatever. It's good information to know when I'm looking at a company or I'm looking at the contracts and the types of work. So that's a good data set right there for attributes. Down here, you get options, a lot of options. You can pull all this data in. If I'm just running a report at a high level and I just want to know contracts, total potential values, that's all I'm going to pull in. So that's all that's going to be is the ceiling value for the contract. It's not going to be what actually was obligated in terms of funding, real money. This is fake money. But it's good information to know that this contract was, whatever, a $75 million contract. If I wanted to know dollars obligated, I'd pull that in there too. But I'll show you in a second This tool will pull tons of data in against all contract actions. So anything that meets the criteria is getting sucked in there. And if it's a $70 million total potential value contract and it's had 55 modifications, it's not going to aggregate that information for you. It's just going to give you that has 50, 56, contract actions, the original plus all of the mods. And it's really annoying. It's not terrible, and it's good information if I want to know, for instance, how money has been obligated on a particular contract. But if I'm just doing broad market research, I'm just going to pull that in. And I'll do another thing down here to really narrow it down. I'm not seeing every single modification. I'm just seeing the initial awards. All right, down here are all of your attributes that you are using to as being, device. What against all of these things, what information am I specifically looking for now? And you get all the same ones. Let's say I just want to, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to add one more attribute top. Let's go for office, search on office. And now I'll grab the contracting office name and I'll grab the funding office name. These are often different. Funding office could be a program office, and the contracting office could just be whatever contracting office did it. They don't necessarily have to work for the same organization. Some small budget authorities who have budget, that can fund contracts are going to go through a contracting office that wouldn't make any logical sense, but it's good to know. Down here, maybe I want to look at, unfortunately, it's not searchable, so you just have to expand these out. Department and agency information. So I expand that out. Maybe I want to pull in if I the contracting office, let's just say that if I knew the contracting office, what it was, and I wanted to see all the contracts that flowed through that contracting office, I would pull this over. I would search for the contracting office in a list. But maybe I don't know the contracting office, so I just want to go up a level in hierarchy, and I just know it's a Navy contract. So department, contracting agency name. Let's go to, yeah, we'll just do that. Contracting agency name. That's fine. If I pull that over, you can either, if you know it already, and it gives you the option to list it or select it. I just go to select and then search what you're looking for, because you don't know how it's going to be displayed. And you think Navy makes sense. Well, it's probably like Department of Navy or something. Yes, and that's how it would need to be That's how you'd need to enter it exactly like that, or you'd get a report with zero information, zero data showing. So now I'm looking for all those attributes, Department of Navy. Now let's narrow it again. Well, and probably the next easiest thing is to go into the product or service. This is what's being bought. FPDS, again, all contract data actions. Most of the fields that would pull into there are flow right out of the contract writing system, and they're like binary, or they're one of like 4 or 5 choices. Description of requirement is the rare opportunity where whatever it is who's writing the contract gets to free text in there. And there's no rules on how you do it. There's no business rules. That's supposed to be managed by the contracting office, where they'll tell their contracting specialist, this is what we're going to put for every contract, a 5-word description or something. But you'll see all types of nonsense, and you'll see spelling errors. You'll see just huge swaths of copy and paste. And I don't think there's like a text limit. So I've seen like whole statements of work copied and pasted into the description requirement. I've seen 1 words. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Depends on how good the contracting office is, but it's your best shot at being able to narrow and search for something that's being actually bought. So if I pull that over, it's not going to be a select. It is going to be, you do get to these qualifiers. So contains, does not contain, contains is probably the easiest. And then you can free text in here a word. Now, for whatever reason, it has to be in all caps. I don't understand that. That's another trial and error thing. It's really stupid. It's got to be all caps. So no, we'll just put something in here like oops, my backspace is not where mine.
Sorry.
Whatever. I don't know. Radar, something like that. And it's really broad. It's going to hundreds and hundreds of results probably.
Right.
But I'm narrowing it down to the Department of Navy, so it's not going to be crazy. So at this point, I've created a report that shows it's going to all of these columns of data. It's going to be constrained within the last 4 years of contract action. It's going to show the base and all options value of the contract action. And it's going to be that contain radar and the description of service through the Department of Navy. Now, again, it's going to pull a contract action in that meets that criteria. So I want to narrow it down. I just want to see initial awards. I don't want to see a report that's going to have endless reporting or repeat contract numbers because it's modification 1 through modification 95. I've learned that a really easy way of fixing that is going back under contract identification. The first choice there is modification number. And the easiest way is I don't want to see authentications. I want to see just those that are not modified, just original awards. That the modification equals 0. That's going to be just the original awards, nothing else. So that's good enough right there. You can save of course, I've got your stupid bar down here, which I don't know if I can move that.
Yeah, I can get that.
There you go. Just put it anywhere for now. That's fine. You save it for whatever, you give it a name, and you can resave these or modify them down the road. Save it.
So now you got all the criteria saved.
And it's gonna be finicky and be stupid. Let's try it again. There you go. All that criteria saved. If I had created a specific location, you can have it in different areas, but it's just going to my reports. Got it.
Yeah.
And you hit run newly saved. It's not going to take you to the report. It's going to take you back to this, and then you have to go down here and hit run report. So it's stupid, but whatever. It's still the best thing out there. So now we're going to run report. It's going to see if it's going to show me anything. And this is always like it's trial and error, right? Because if you get a report that shows 0 data, it means that you put in querying information that is producing results because it's too narrow or because I spelled something wrong. But I kept it really vague, so it's going to give me lots of data.
662 results.
Yeah. All individual results. So the first thing I'll do is I'll export this thing to Excel so I can start looking at it.
Just save it in the desktop.
Yeah.
Now what we're going to need to do, you can still see this on screen.
It's in protected mode. I don't know what that means.
Here, let me take a look at this real quick. We're going to stop there. Let's see, there it is. See what the issue is here.
Should just open. Maybe it wasn't because I was in the incognito mode.
Yeah. There we go.
There you go. That's good enough. Now you gotta restart.
Yeah, I gotta
restart the share.
Start the share again. Hold on a second here.
Yeah, there you go.
Now we're sharing the Excel document.
All right. So it gives me everything that I've just pulled into this report. And, I just expand some stuff out a little bit there so it's not all cramped together and I can actually read it. And the easiest thing to do for me is just to start searching to see. Number one, and you can see here, This right here, I can tell is a standalone contract. Why? Well, one, because I see it's got a P right there, but two, because it doesn't have an IDIV. This right here is an order that was let against this particular IDIV contract. I know that's a GSA contract. Most of these are, that's a Navy Seaport contract. I know that is. That's a Navy Seaport contract. All these are going to be Seaport contracts, which would make sense because I pulled it against the Navy. But these, because I pulled modifications equaling 0, the only reason there'd be a duplicate value in here is if the contract specialist screwed up and then went back and had to do something, and they basically, if they screwed something up, and they would have a duplicate value in the system. Otherwise, I'm not going to see duplicate contracts. Nice. It's going to give me the company name, and then you can see here, look at all these firm fixed price contracts. That's pretty cool. And of course, the dollar value. But if I wanted to see just a cost plus fixed fee, these are going to be your higher dollar, more complex things. And then if I wanted to search through a particular requirement description, I don't even know what I would search for. I was narrowing it down on a particular weapon system. I'd start keyword searching on that. And then that's a good way of refining your report, because if I know, okay, I see now I'm really only looking at something that is going to contain I don't know, is over the horizon, whatever. There we go. That's really what I'm looking for, something that has this in its description. Then I can go back and I can search. Now I brought it down. There's only one one contract to date that in my 4-year period that I was looking back that has over the horizon and radar in the same blurb there. But maybe I want to expand it out and I want to look at Air Force. But I know that over the horizon is the one of the thing that I want to look at, right? It's a good way of expanding your how you would be searching for things by looking what's out there and how it's being recorded. But that's the gist of it. I mean, you can do this as broad or as specific as you want. So oftentimes, like I was telling you, I'll get queries where people will say, "Hey, I'm looking at a contract opportunity. I was talking to a company and they mentioned this thing. They talked about it in vague terms. They talked about it in vague terms in terms of like the office or the funded amount. I don't know the contract number. I don't know who the company is that holds it. I don't know the date frames. But if I have at least a little bit to go off of, I can probably pull the report pretty quickly. It takes about, whatever, 5 to 10 minutes. And then I can narrow it down there and say, okay, well, this is what I know. You said it was Navy. You said it was probably out of this office. Over the past 4 years, here's 4 contracts that kind of meet that description. Here's 4 companies. Which one do you think it is? And work with the BD guys, and they'll narrow it down from there. And then, because I pulled the solicitation number in here, did I? I can't remember if I did or didn't. I didn't here in this case. But if I had pulled the solicitation number down, I can grab the solicitation number and I can go out to Sam.gov and search for that solicitation number. And I can pull the solicitation down and I can open up that RFP and drill into the scope of work and drill into the statement of work to figure out exactly what was being done to narrow down what that contract is for and see if it meets the parameters of what my people are looking for. Of these Navy Seaport contracts make price analysis really, really easy because they're almost all CF, which means the government couldn't define the requirement well enough to make it firm fixed price. And the only way they could define it was in terms of level of effort by category. And these RFPs will give it to you. They'll just give it to you to keep parity amongst the offers. This is what we want you to quote. We want you to quote these 15 labor categories, these full-time equivalencies in terms of man hours against each one. That's what we want you to quote, nothing more, nothing less. If I can get that from an RFP, know what the dollar value that resulted from the offer that won the award, I can do some really basic math to back into the average hourly rate per labor of service or service hour, right? And then I can say, okay, well, company X is pricing systems engineers at $137 an hour. Can we meet or beat that? Is that something that we can achieve? And if we can't, can we outdo them in terms of technical proposal? Can we paint a better picture from a technical proposal perspective to justify a trade government's mind? We're not going to beat on price, but can we achieve a dollar per hour value argument that the government will say, you know what, we'll eat it on cost. We're going to give it to the higher bidder. And then it gives you an idea of how much better you need to be. It becomes really formulaic in terms of, do we have the ability to do this work in a way that will give the government a good value argument? And can we describe it in clear picture of what the value is? So, yeah, government, we know you're going to be paying on average $10 to $12 more per hour, but here's what that $10 to $12 per hour is buying you. It's buying you on average 15 years more experience than what your labor categories are requiring. It's buying you senior level, on average, level executive experience of our key personnel and our subject matter experts, which means that like the continuity issues of switching to a new contractor aren't going to be there. Like we're well plugged into the program and we'll be able to pick up the ball and run with it. You don't have to worry about the switching costs that might be associated with changing from one contractor to another. Like we really try hard to paint that argument and write it out in the cost proposal and ghost it into the technical proposal so that they together and they tell the same story, these talking points that, yeah, we're going to be more expensive. If that's the most important thing, is knowing that you're going to be more expensive. That it's not a guarantee. You may think you've got it on lockdown because you've got the best possible product, but dollars win the day more than often unless you can explain to the buyer why they want to buy more expensive. And if the RFP doesn't ask for more expensive, the RFP asks for a Honda Accord, like it doesn't make any sense for you to give them a Cadillac. They don't want a Cadillac. Now, if you can explain, I'm going to give you the Honda Accord, it's just going to be more expensive than what you would normally for. And it's going to come with all these added features and benefits that you didn't even know you wanted, right? That's what it really comes down to. And understanding, like, there's sometimes where we'll run this scenario, and it's just there's no possible way we'll be able to come close to price. We're not going to be able to tie on price. We're going to beat on price every single day. There's no possible way you can compete. And there's no good indication that the government has any desire to switch contractors. Like, and that's where it comes down to like all the human side of business development and getting to understand who the program office is and who the key players are and getting the word of mouth. Like, are you satisfied with the current contract performer? Oh, they've had some issues in fulfilling positions. That thing, there's been some key slots they haven't been able to keep. The retention hasn't been great. So there's some vacancies in the office. That's interesting. And then we can that in our proposal. Subventions has excellent, retention rates, and here's proof to back it up. But if you don't know that there's going to be an indication the company is undesirable or the government wants to switch, it's safe to assume they don't want to go through the switching costs. And it's safe to assume that the only way you're going to win that contract is if you're able to seriously underbid. And you're not going to want to underbid unless you think it's worth it in the long run to take a hit now versus like eventually come on top. And that really, you can't just go into these things and think, oh, we've got an awesome product. It's going into it knowing that you're going to get beat on probably. And at this stage, if you're just looking for opportunities, you haven't had an opportunity to influence how that requirement is being, written and generated, then you're coming in playing by their rules. And that's never preferable. Preferably, you're able to help influence that requirement and have the requiring activity understand what other capabilities maybe they want that the current contractor isn't providing, that they can be written into the solicitation, because they have an obligation to judge all offers according to the solicitation, not according to what wasn't asked, but what according to the rules were that were published in the solicitation and how it was going to be evaluated fairly. And if you think you've got an awesome idea and you're just going to put it out there, government didn't ask for it, you're not going to bonus points. So that's why influencing the requirement is is really good.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let's say I kind of like to try another search
Yeah.
to be more specific about what we're looking for. So let me stop the share here. Say I'll go back to Sam.gov.
It's going to be in the background because it was incognito.
Yeah. Hold on a second.
There, that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Export.
Yeah.
Scroll down. That's it.
Okay. So let's say that I'm Excipitor and um I'm I'm trying to find out what big contracts. So we'll use Lockheed as an example. Let's say I'm looking for a big Lockheed contract that uses one of my competitors' components. So this would give me a clue of type of contract that maybe I could outbid these guys within, not with the government, but with Lockheed, and interest them in my product. So let's say I want to find a nice big fat contract like that. So we'll use an Excipitor product. And because I'm not Excipitor, I'm not thinking immediately of what that would be. But let's say that it's an advanced LAN replacement system, or something that uses new computing capabilities to get around LAN. Any idea what, like, some words that you might search for a contract using advanced data transfer system?
I mean, yeah, I mean, any of that stuff. And if I didn't know, I'd start in Google and just look around for keywords. But
Okay,
playing with it is probably just as good as anything.
I can Google for a keyword right now.
The nice thing about this, once you've got a report built, you can modify it indefinitely.
Right.
So if I just go under data and hit reprompt, it'll take me back to the report builder.
Yeah.
So I don't have to create a new report. And then I can just go back down to description of requirement and plug another keyword in there.
Okay, let's try that.
So what do you want? What are you thinking?
Advanced data delivery. Is that too many words?
Just try data delivery.
Okay.
If it gives me anything that's too vague, we'll go from there.
Yeah, and once we find one that looks good, I'm gonna ask some additional questions, because there was some stuff you did last time that I'd like to repeat. Okay, so it's given us these options.
This is very specific to how it was free texted in there.
Yeah.
You probably want to make it more broad, or think what systems this particular component would be typically incorporated into.
Right. And that's where, because I'm not a tech head, I'm not coming up with anything up my head, but you could just try data transfer instead of data delivery. See if that gives you anything better.
Oh, wrong report. Gives you some things here.
You think they're all huge. They're all big contracts. Let's
Some of them are pretty small.
let me let me drive for a second here. Here. Right, this USRL data transfer reduction, $3 million contract. Some of these are a lot bigger than these, right? Some contracts we would find would be much bigger than $3 million, but we'll use that one as an example. So how do we drill in? That's Lockheed. Isn't that nice? I said Lockheed before. So how would we drill in to learn more about this?
Well, I can tell you right off the bat that it's a contract that went from 22 and expired in 24. There's probably a replacement contract for it already. I can tell you that it's uh pretty certain that G, I'd have to remember what that G and that IDIQ number stands for. I'm pretty certain oh, I'm going to say it wrong. Either way, I know that task order written against the contract that it will have multiple orders written against it. And if I had plugged into this, gone back to reprompt, and I pulled in the solicitation number. Oops. Solicitation ID. It's going to go to that's fine. If I have the solicitation ID, then I can search for the solicitation. And then I can drill into the solicitation and figure out which one it is. So here's the solicitation. It's a FY22 RFP.
All right.
The easiest thing is just to copy and paste it. Now it's gonna do it for again. I don't care. Cancel. I'll just it's who is it? Let's see here. It's 192.22R
I
0906.
can type that in if you want.
Well, we'll just try searching in Sam and see if anything comes up. And if not Sam, there are plenty of other databases that are more intuitive to use. That most of them are more services.
Okay.
Gov1 is my favorite. I don't know how much it is, pretty cheap per user per year. But we'll just search under opportunities. It's not going to be active. I know that. There's 192.22R something.
You need to get rid of the bar.
There we go. 192.22R 0960. Of course. See, that's just. I may have typed it in wrong.
I can put it right on my phone and then you can type it in.
Or you can also try searching for the. Oh, 3 zeros. That's why. I might just found. Yeah. So I mean, it's if I had GovWin up,
But you could just pull it up on your computer.
yeah, I could try
Just
that.
pull it up your computer and see what we learn. It's 1-2, yeah. Actually zoom in on it here.
Hard to tell you. And it could be because this is uh, um, a single award IDIQ where they have to publicize.
Hmm. How do we find the larger contract for this thing?
Oh, I don't. So without understanding what's going on there, if you had more narrowed down, no idea what that is, no idea what that description is,
Yeah, yeah.
But if you had a more narrowed down description of the requirement, like a good keyword to plug in there. I mean, this is something that is probably, I can probably look that one up right there,
Okay.
the IDIQ, and see if anything comes up about that one at least. Nine. Yes. So it's a big contract that appears to be tied specifically to the F-35 program.
Okay. So how would you identify um the um the key players on this contract who would have been involved in making purchasing decisions on behalf of Lockheed?
It's a basic ordering agreement. That's what that G stands for.
Okay.
So it's a basic ordering agreement to Lockheed. So basic ordering agreement is like it's like there's not going to be other prime contractors. It's just government and a contractor, and they say we're going to be a bunch of stuff that's classifiable enough that we can lock in, high level prices
Yeah.
over periods of time, and then we can just order again on a repetitive basis. So that was a $4.7 billion contract that they entered into with Lockheed Martin for really for lots of different programs, but the F-35 seems to be the biggest one that utilized it.
Okay. Because we know there's a radar component, we know there's a data transfer reduction component, we know there's all kinds of stuff in this thing. They could be purchasing a system like one of the products that Acceptor makes. So it could be that there's a competitor's product involved in here. So figuring out, I'm just trying to use this as an example. If we were to figure out then, and I believe you can, if I recall, figure out who some of the key personnel are at Lockheed that are making purchasing decisions here. And
Yeah,
and then drill down from there to try to identify who you might cold call.
yeah, sure. So, for instance, if I wanted to um, figure out which particular division of Lockheed Martin is doing this, the cage code or the UEI cage is probably as good as any. Cage codes are unique to facilities, to built like offices, basically. It just stands for contractor and government entity. So it's an address code. It's a code that ties to an address. Government entities can have cage codes too. So there's the cage code right there.
Right.
So Lockheed Martin, in this case, that's 81755 is the cage code that has that particular. Probably a better way of doing this. If I had FPDS, I'd run a report specifically, and I could just go back and forth, pull up FPDS, and just search on that particular number,
Right.
and be certain, because this is the cage code that's tied to this task order, but it's probably the same cage code. 81755. I go back to Sam, and I go under entity information. I go down to entity, and I go down to cage. I think it was 81755. Here's that particular. Oh, it's because I'm searching on two things at the same time. There we go. 8155.
That's out of Fort. It's the office out of Fort Worth, Texas, that has operational authority here.
And then there's going to be points of contact.
There we go. Now we're down to the granular level of who you could actually talk to.
So
this is what I was looking for. So this is there's electronic business, government business.
yeah,
Cool. And
yeah.
past performance. Fantastic. So you find out who's actually live here on this multi-billion-dollar F-35 and supporting components contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you'd still have to, you have the address to the facility, so you just Google, find out, an office number to Lockheed Martin's
Yeah.
Fort Worth, Texas facility, and call and ask to get the contact information for Jennifer Thomas, or be connected to Jennifer Thomas or Corey Hart or Renee Luna, whoever, and then just go from there.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's fantastic. All right. I think we're done for now. We'll go ahead and stop the share. And we will stop the recording. And thank you very much.
Yep.